John, welcome to the show, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, thanks for thinking of me. It was kind of a surprise, but it is a nice one.
You know what? You're one of those people where you kind of, there's certain people you search up the name and there's like you're inundated with lots of podcasts and interviews and in-depth stuff. But I feel like you kind of dip in and out. You're not somebody who's maybe always out there, which I kind of like.
Probably true. It's interesting. My connection to the business recently has been less than normal, even though it's interesting. When I say to the business, I'm involved in 3 or 4 movies right now, actually, but we could talk about those if you wish. But interestingly enough, I had some physical issues. I had 7 back surgeries last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I just had a knee replacement 12 weeks ago, and it was like this. I was inundated with these things, and now I'm all good. I'm actually physically, I'm coming back. I just started paddling yesterday morning, and things like that. But with all of that, I have been in development, okay, on quite a few things, but it's different than actually being on a set, being prepping, being, totally involved, which I still want to be. And, on one hand, look, and this may sound funny to you, but I'm going to be 70 years old on the 4th of July. Okay. So when I was 65, 66, before the physical things hit me, I was, I'd been pretty busy. I'd done a movie, Lullaby. And then after that, things kind of, whatever. COVID was still ramping around and all the bullshit, So I wonder, do they want a 65-year-old white guy to direct movies anymore? An old man. And I'm not being racist. I'm not being judgmental. I want every young person, every person of every color and every whatever to shine and have opportunities. I really do. It's just a certain reality. I've been in the business over 50 years, man. So I understand the reality of all that stuff. So it's interesting. But in the meantime, I did switch agents, and I'm at IG with David Saunders, and I switched to them. He just called me out of the blue. He was an old agent that I had been with before. And he goes, John, we want you. And I was at CAA, and it was just not a lot was going on. Nothing against them. They're huge. They're giant, and they're great people. But anyway, I switched, and this guy's passion was like, whoa. I went, okay. And it was really cool because I am busier now than I've been in many years.
You obviously, I can tell from the last 2 or 3 minutes. I assume you like that. You like to be. I know you mentioned the chill vibe, but like I'm assuming creatively, like you like to be on the go. It probably helps to keep you feeling good and like keep your
It
mind
does.
switched on.
Oh, it totally does. Yeah, I mean, this is in my blood. Like I say, I worked on my first film when I was 15 years old. Okay. So, and I was crawling on cable when I was 6 years old at my dad's company, the movie rental company, way back when. My dad was behind the scenes, a visionary and equipment and all that. And he was an electrician on The Wizard of Oz. And, he lit Singing in the Rain. He was a gaffer on Singing in the Rain. And I just grew up in the business, even though, I went to college, I got a BA in business economics. But once I started really working in the business, I just fell in love with it. And it's an amazing business. It's tough, it's hard, but it's fun. And I could never imagine really doing anything else, actually. For ever since I was probably 19 years old, once I really got a good taste of it, and I was supporting myself, working in the summers as an assistant cameraman. Anyway, ironically, or not ironically, I guess maybe it's natural, I still have the same passion. I do. And I'm super passionate about the projects I'm involved in. I'm actually even, honestly, I'm proud of everything I've done. Not all has been accepted well, some have, but I'm proud of it all. And, I'm thankful to have been having these opportunities, and I'm really thankful to think that I'm actually going to have more.
And you know what? I think it's something that maybe I don't know if it's like the human connection and the human experience where I know myself at least, I know many other people feel like this as an audience member, you can nearly feel that like permeate through the screen at the end product. You can feel that passion and that
Yeah.
energy, or like,
Yeah.
versus when I feel like nowadays there's a lot of stuff comes out very quick and very often, and a lot of it is kind of phoned in. You can tell
Formula.
that it's,
Formula.
yeah, and it's just, it's making a movie for the sake of making a movie, or I don't know, something uh, a haunted house movie makes a lot of money, and then within 12 months there's like, 25 haunted house movies, and you're kind of like, well, okay. That one worked because you can tell everyone cared about what they were making, and these other movies just kind of were made to see, can we just replicate the box office success, or can we replicate the streaming service or whatever?
Correct. I agree with you. I do. And look, it's funny. I was just this morning on the phone with a writer. His name is Raul Bermudez. He's a really good writer. Oh my God. And he didn't get into the business till he was around 40. And I think he was a journalist. So he was a writer, but he, for whatever reasons, I won't get into all that right now. He didn't start till he was 40, and he's Cuban, half Cuban. And ironically, the movie that he wrote takes place in Key West, Florida. And he's been down there his whole life as a kid. He's from um, Miami, actually. And it was very cute because my fiance was getting ready to go work out, and I was just laying in the bed, just bullshitting with him, and she can hear him through the phone, even with the speaker not on. And his passion resonates. And I actually have the same thing. And we both said, we're both Latin. I'm half Italian. He's, whatever. And we, innately, I think we have a certain passion. But, once you get hooked by it, the business, I mean, telling stories, and in whatever position you're in, and for me, even as a DP and as an assistant, I always was enthralled with it. And I never, even on the set as an assistant cameraman, I would never just fuck around. I would always pay attention. I was just so interested in what the director had to say and what the DP and the first AD, of course, because they're telling you kind of how to ramrod everything or whatever. But it's something that's really cool, and I loved camera department. I loved shooting. It was, innately, it uses both sides of your brain, technically and creatively. I happened to grow up in a family, like I say, my dad was the biggest gaffer, one of them in Hollywood at the time. And, I learned stuff across the dinner table that a lot of people never had the opportunity to learn because I was involved in the business and I had no choice. I mean, when you're an Italian family, you go to work at 13, and I've been working ever since in the business since I was 13. And, I don't know what else I would do as well, but I still, anything I do is with, whatever, 200% or whatever you want to call it, because that's even true with me in life in general. I mean, I'm pretty passionate about everything I do, yet I'm kind of chill on the other hand. I like to have a good time. I respect everybody. The best idea wins. And I'm very collaborative, but I also have a strong vision for whatever I do, and I just go for it, man.
Was it the fact that, obviously it was in the family, or do you remember maybe a pivotal moment, whether it was a movie or a TV show or something you seen, a commercial that, like, was like I don't want to say like the light bulb moment, but you can kind of harken back to and say, that's when I really looked at something and went, wow, I would love to do that or know how that's done.
It's interesting. Nobody's ever asked me that question. That's a really good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I will say this. I the first time I worked on a movie set um, was when I was 15, and that was pivotal for me only because I went to for a vacation to Dallas, Texas. My brother Matt, who's 15 years older than me, he's a cinematographer, very accomplished one. You may or may know about Matt, and we're very close. And still, God bless him. And he was operating on this low budget uh, movie. It was called Bat People or some shit. I don't know. Wait, what was it called? No, that wasn't Bat People. It was a book of numbers. A book of numbers. Sorry. That's right. And I went there for 2 weeks just to hang out with him, you know, but I knew how to load camera magazines because I had worked in our camera department. And the assistant cameraman there had never really even worked in 35. He worked with 16. He was overloaded. And so they asked me if I would help and just load. So I stayed the whole movie and I worked as a loader. It was my first paying job. I got $120 an hour. An hour, a day. I'm sorry, a week, $120 a week. My God. And to me, that was more money than I'd ever seen. Okay. And it was so amazing. And I didn't even think so much about the money. It was just having the responsibility and being a part of all that was so epic, I guess you could say, for me. Now, that's one moment. Then, there's many moments, maybe seeing The Exorcist as a teenager scared the shit out of me. And that impressed me that a movie could do that to me. So there was maybe that film, because I was raised Catholic and, you believe that shit and oh my God, you go crazy. But, there's other moments. There's one, I was working on the Dukes of Hazzard, the original series as a first AC. And there was a director. He was the oldest rotation director of the show. And for some reason, man, he took a liking to me and he took me under his wing and he said, "John, I think you're going to be a director." It never entered my mind. And I actually forgot it after that until I ultimately did direct. And he thought I just had this weird, I don't know, talent or something. I don't know. He ended up giving me a book on Rembrandt. And it was weird because I looked at it and I looked at those paintings, and almost every painting of Rembrandt, the key light comes from the left for some reason. And anyway, whatever. These are just little things I remember, okay? And I forgot about it. But until later, I ended up directing Mortal Kombat, Annihilation after shooting the first one. And that was on a whim. That changed the that was like a fluke how that even happened. And that obviously changed the direction of my life, even though I went back to shooting after that. But the point is it was a giant undertaking for a first-time director, giant, 4 continents, $35 million movie at the time, which would be double that now or more, and 1,000 people worked on the film, 400 visual effect shots. And it was an incredible experience. Got to bring my brother, he was my DP, and I'd worked for him on and off through the years. It was just like magic. And the movie came out pretty good. There's things about it I wish were different. Like, I wish we could have, even though I loved James Remar, he was great, but I wish we could have gotten Christopher Lambert, only because that's what the audience wanted. Okay. But they didn't want to pay him $2 million for a sequel, so we couldn't get him, And that I think hurt the movie a little bit, but things like that. But I still have no regrets. I'm still proud of it, you know. But the point is that moment of when I was going to be directing that movie, like I say, it was on a whim. I didn't even, they called me to shoot the second one, and I was talking to Larry Kazanoff's assistant, and she said, John, would you be interested in shooting the second Mortal Kombat? And I go, I'd be honored, but I think I'd rather direct it. It just popped out of my mouth. I'd never I didn't even know she was going to call me. And guess what? 2.5 weeks later, I was directing the movie. It was weird. So anyway, those are, I guess, moments, you know. It was a lengthy answer, but
How does that, like, on the topic of that, how does that that happen? Because that seems like quite an unconventional thing. That, like
very.
you said, a first time director, obviously you've got work under your belt, but as a director, it's your, it's your first outing, and it's this huge IP. The first movie had done what it done, and obviously, you worked on that. But to kind of be put into the chair, I suppose it's like everything you kind of want, but then at the same time, there's got to be a moment of like, wow, I'm gonna shit my pants here. This is a huge undertaking. Like, all, like you said, like thousands of people, all across the globe. This huge movie, like, and I don't know if you feel it now, but year on year,
Mm-hmm.
that movie seems to get more and more of an audience, and more and more. It's like it's one of those movies that I feel like has staying power. And we've seen some attempts at the Mortal Kombat franchise, and there's been
Recently.
like, yeah, and things like that. And I just don't know if they hit as well. And I think it makes people go back and go, you know what, actually, those movies were really badass and really fun.
You know, it's true. It's interesting. That's a really, you know, was I anxious? Yes. But was I ready? Yes. And I'll explain why, how it happened. It's pretty bizarre because I had worked previously on a movie as a DP, and the director, I'm not going to say anything about what it is or who it was, but it was a fun movie to work on, and the director was the nicest person. Loved him. But honestly, I said to myself, if he can direct, I know I can direct. It just was in the back of my mind. And it wasn't long after that they made this call, and that's how it happened. Now, that being said, the reason it happened is, if you know back in time, I shot the mask in the first Mortal Kombat for New Line. And, you know, I guess what I would say is this: both directors, Paul Anderson, awesome, very visual, very stylized director, great director for the first one, in my opinion. Um, and Chuck Russell, still a friend. Oh my God, what a vision that guy had, and he's fun. Both were so fun to work with, But I will say, I had a part in the success of both of those movies. Looking back, I understand it more now than when I was doing it. I was just doing my job. But when I mentioned that to the assistant, I get a call back like that afternoon, and it was like, "Whoa!" They're going, "You really want to do this?" And then Carla Fry, who was head of production at New Line, who was a production manager on The Mask, okay? We became friends on that. And I got so many stories from that I blow your mind. But I've got so many stories from every movie that would blow people's minds. Actually, I'm working on, I haven't been vigilant, but on a memoir of all my movies,
That was going to be my next question.
of my career. And it's pretty funny. It's pretty fun. But in any case, she and I connected on The Mask, and she was head of production. God rest her soul. She passed away at around 42 years old from cancer. Was the head of the production for Lord of the Rings. She got that whole thing going, and then after that, she passed, and I loved her dearly. Anyway, but she had a bit to say about it, and actually, Bob Shea and Mike DeLuca, they were, they knew what I had done for New Line, so they just said, I guess it was a no-brainer, but it happened so goddamn fast. It was bizarre, and I will say, I think the fighting in that movie is quite good, and it looks amazing. And so did the first Mortal Kombat. And Paul had a lot to do with that too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from Paul, of course. But they knew, and Carla really knew what my contributions were. Okay. And that's how it happened. And it was bizarre, but it was great. And it's funny because recently I had to look back at both of those movies for they're doing a 2-disc thing, the re-releasing them, and I did a video interview, and I did a just a not a podcast but an audio video interview with them for both of them, and it brought me back, so I had to watch it again. Not had to, but I did, of course. And it was trippy, but I'm still, like I say, man, I'm proud of it. Yeah, it's campy. The acting, nothing against those actors. Most of them weren't even actors. They were, they were fighters or maybe had done some acting. And, some were really good actors, including James Remar. He's a great actor. But, again, it was just there's things that people could say about it that they don't like it. And I understand that, but I'm still proud of it. So what can I say?
It's got to be kind of gratifying though, right? That like, especially now, I genuinely, this isn't just because we're having this conversation, but like a lot of these movies are being rediscovered over and over again, which is probably one of the only good things about the invention of the internet and social media, and like younger and younger audiences seem to be discovering them. And I don't know if it's I recently had seen that like DVDs are on a comeback now, and not just the boutique labels, just DVDs in general, like the thrifting of like having a DVD collection over streamers. I do some work in events for a wildlife park here for like their Halloween events and stuff like that.
Cool.
And they were telling me that their experiences are like have taken over everything. The being able to go and like feel something and experience something now is seemingly on the rise again. And a lot of these movies, I think, have a lot more soul and a lot more energy than some of the stuff we see nowadays. And what I was kind of getting to was, even in Ireland, which obviously has a way smaller market than the States or, places in Europe, I started to see these movie screenings and movie nights where they kind of make it like I guess like an experience, an event. Like you can go and meet like-minded people and you can watch a movie and you can, talk shit about it afterwards and have fun and laugh together and whatever. It seems to be getting more and more popular, and the audience seems to be from, like 50, 60, 70, all the way down to like, late teens. And I'm like, that's kind of cool that that's become a thing again.
Very cool. I love it. Well, it's even like LPs, and I ironically, I saved all my albums from college. Nice. I have a shitload of them in right there, like a couple hundred or whatever it is. I've got a turntable from Czechos. I'm an old audiophile. I've never let it go. And that it's almost like the grain in film that people just can't get away from loving, or or the static on an LP, whatever, you know what I mean? And I think there's a rebound effect because of the internet, and so many things are not tangible. They're in the ether, and there's a certain reality to these things, and touchy feel even is what we need. We've gone too far. And so it's nice to see this kind of stuff. Actually, I'm all for it. I really am. I dig it. You know.
It kind of, I don't want to speak too soon on it, but it feels like it's in a way coming full circle. At one point there, I was a little bit worried that maybe we were going to go completely the other way. And I know a lot of people talk about AI and things like that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I can see a lot of the argument there, but I don't know. There's a part of me that holds out hope that like that there's I don't know. There's something to being human that we can tell the difference, and we don't really want everything overly manufactured, and everything has to be like perfect AI CG, everything, nothing is practical, all those little quirky things like you mentioned, like campy dialogue, and the acting's a little bit off or whatever in any movie, and I feel like that adds to the heart of it, the enjoyment of it, versus sometimes when I go see some of this stuff, I don't know, like maybe some of the Marvel stuff, for example, and I'm not knocking it, but it's like it's so like everything on screen. I know absolutely everything, even down to the costume. Sometimes is like all computer generated, and it just completely takes me out of the experience.
Oh, it's true. Look at. I have my opinions of AI. I I have my own little saying about AI. I really haven't told many people this, but it's called AI, our artificial intelligence. But guess what? I call it OI. It's our intelligence
Yeah,
because it's just copying everything that we have done since the beginning of time, if you will. And it's not original, period. So if it's not original, it's not original. And authenticity comes even through a movie screen more. Now, I guess you could say, well, zooming or, whatever. It's like in the middle ground. It's pretty authentic, but it's still not the same as being there in person. And it's not the same as experience a movie in a movie theater with people as well. I mean, it all just follows to a certain degree. And I embrace AI, as it's funny because I actually have a movie I've been attached to for a long time. It's really hard to get made because it's live action and animation. And it's a drama. And it's very cool. And yet it's a thriller. It's a little dark. And it's about it's about a kid that his mother is a street artist, a 3D chalk street artist in San Francisco. And her little son jumps into her art and goes into this jungle. It's called the Concrete Jungle. And
oh
it's
nice.
awesome. But it's hard to get made because it's expensive to make. Now, with the advent of AI, what's interesting is the way it's written organically. That environment, until you get to the third act and things get resolved, it's actually kind of synthetic. So this is an opportunity to use AI in an organic way, I've thought, and it would reduce costs. But even at that, I'm hesitant to go there for the reasons that you're talking about. But it would be a really cool way to use AI, yet because the live action and the stuff outside the jungle chalk art is very real, and it would be real. Everything would be real. And anyway, and because AI is photorealistic enough, people won't understand the difference so much having it done in AI necessarily until you realize it's actually part of the story, and that's kind of cool. But generally, I've seen movies where, recently the backgrounds are all AI and the foreground is comped with real actors, and it still doesn't look great, to be honest. They don't have the resolution factor worked out yet. But neither here nor there. It's just not. It's not it's not in essence creative.
Yeah, yeah, I kind of fed into the idea at first. I was like, oh yeah, completely against AI. It's going to take all the jobs. Everything's going to be replaced, and it's going to be like Terminator, where Skynet takes over, and that's it.
Right.
And I don't. The more I listen to people like yourself and that opinion of like, well, everything it knows comes from us. Anything it's ever known is because of us. So nothing technically, it's just rehashed versions of stuff we've already given it. So it's not really, the originality comes from,
It's not original. It
yeah.
is absolutely not original. And originality is what sparks uh, the soul, I think, of audiences more than anything.
When you shot Mortal Kombat Annihilation,
Hmm.
in the, I guess in the time after that, the movie comes out, it's this huge movie, it's this huge IP. Did the experience, I don't want to say turn you off, but was it like such a whirlwind that you were like, okay, I need to like take some time and like figure out where to go next? Or did you catch the bug for like, I might like to do this again?
You know, the experience itself was amazing. It was, for many reasons. I was presented and allowed to have, with and allowed to have an opportunity to do something amazing, actually, especially for a first time director. And I so appreciated it then, and I so appreciate it now. Number one, I was able to take my experience and, you know, and feel comfortable, actually, is maybe the word, to helm and lead those 1,000+ people, to make a movie. I was blessed because I brought people with me that I loved, like starting with my brother, and then crew that I had worked with alongside of, in and out of the business growing up. I never moved up in the business working with my brother and my family. I never went to the next level under them. I would never do that because I wanted to always do it on my own because of the nepotism thing. I didn't want people to think that everything was handed to me because I earned every single thing that I've ever done. But now I'm able to bring those people with. And it was like having your family and then building another family in the UK. I'm taking UK people to Jordan, and we shot in Jordan with Israeli filmmakers as well. First time in the history of the world that Israelis and Jordanians work together. Now, think about that. I've got stories about that would blow your mind, about the conflicts initially, of how they couldn't get along. And then all of a sudden, by the time we were done, we were all family. And it was beautiful, man. It was fucking beautiful, And because, I always have felt that the people you work with, especially in making a movie, they are family, whether it's blood or not, because you spend more time with them while you're doing it than your own family. And so you might as well make it like that. So those are just with the cast, the crew, everybody, the people you meet around the world. It was fucking amazing. I loved them all. So there's that. Now, at the end of the movie, it was 2 years of my life. It was a long time. Okay. As a DP, you're on a movie 3 to 6 months at the most, usually 3, 4, whatever. And after it was done, there's something that happened in post near the end that was not really cool. I won't talk about it, but it soured my impression of the business a little bit. And so there was that, and I really don't want to talk about it, but so I will say I was exhausted at the end of that. I literally, the last few days of shooting in Thailand, I had walking pneumonia. I didn't really know it.
Wow.
And they were literally giving me oxygen between setups. I was hurting so bad. And I finished the movie. You know, I worked through the pneumonia, and then I think I went to Hawaii to decompress before my family came. You know, it's like going to war. Making a movie is like a battle, you know, in a good way, but it really is. So I didn't really direct for a while after that. I just went back to shooting, to your point. And whether that was like, you know, intentional, psychological, subconscious, I don't know. But I did know though that I have it in me to direct. And I really love it. You know, I loved shooting. Oh my God, loved it. It, when I did it, I loved it. But I passed that baton on, you know. I really don't want to shoot anymore, and I just want to direct. And for some reason, people are still considering me. So there you have it.
Was it difficult? Because obviously that's a very unique experience to get to direct a movie like that on your first time out.
Oh,
Um, you know, and then the next time you go to direct or subsequent times after that, uh, like I've never been in that position, but I can imagine the high that that must be. Is
mhm.
there a I don't know, a pressure or a desire to be like, you know, I want it to be like that all the time?
Okay. Really, what I call it is it's extremely stressful to direct a movie, but there's a lot of it's most if it goes the way you want it to, or the way when I say the way you want it to, if it turns out the way you want it to, doing it and later, of course, um, it's good stress. I call there's good stress and bad stress. Bad stress will emotionally and physically fuck you up. Good stress will make you tired, if you know what I mean. And you just got to
Yeah.
go through it and deal and then rest or whatever. They're different things. I thrive actually on that kind of stress. I love to drag a crew along down the track. I just love it, you know. I do, but I also do it with compassion and respect because let's face it, this is something I created in my own mind, and it's something I told crews. I don't know when I first said it, but this is what I believe. Making a movie is like an artist painting a picture, okay? And the artist holds a brush, paints, whatever. I used to do that actually when I was a kid, but neither here nor there. Making a movie, it's the same thing, except there's 100 or 200 or 1,000 people working on that one piece of art. I'm the director. Everybody has their hand on the brush. I just steer it. Okay. And it's such an awesome dynamic of working with people. And, you know, it's interesting because Kathy, my fiance, on my last movie, Lullaby, she came with me to Toronto and she had never been around a movie set. We met later in life. We both, for whatever reasons, and didn't know anything about the movie business. And she was blown away and still is to this day the coordination and the amount of energy and the work and the hard work and the brutal times even of making a movie. And you know, you're not going to do it unless you love it. I mean, really, I mean, you will, I guess, to make a buck, but it's interestingly enough, obviously the money comes if you do good work. If you don't, it won't necessarily. And it's not about the money. It's about the love of telling stories and sharing them. But there is this high anxiety of acceptance. In other words, especially as a director, because you're either the hero or you're the villain. You know, you get it all, and so it's all that weight's on your shoulders the whole time. You know, and I actually thrive on it, especially because I think I've been fortunate enough in almost every case, not totally, but to surround myself with really good people, you know, that are like-minded and like kind of have the same kind of soul about it, if that makes sense.
Do you like obviously you know, directing and shooting, and you mentioned, you know, your contribution and your work on things like Mortal Kombat and The Mask, and
Mhm.
you know, other people noticing that. When you say that, what specifically do you mean? And then I guess, you know, say let's say you're just shooting a movie. Um how do you deal with that dynamic of like you've got a director and you're maybe like, well, you know, maybe we should do it this way, and I don't think we really, is that a tough dynamic? And then when you went into the director's chair, is it hard for you not to go the other way and be like, well, actually, if I was in your position now, I wouldn't do that, I would do this? Is it hard to go between?
Interesting. Very good question. Um, you know, as a shooter, I work with very different, and not just as a DP, but even as an assistant cameraman. I worked with Spielberg, Coppola, you know, great James Cameron. I shot a video for him for Bill Paxton's band Martini Ranch, which you may not even know, but it's called Reach. You should look at it on YouTube. It's a 7.5 minute music video. It's fucking awesome. But so I work with all kinds of directors, and directors that know what they want and know how to do it. And I work with a lot of directors in different degrees that need help. Okay. And the job of a cinematographer or any department head is to help the director realize the vision that he or she has. Okay. And so, you know, I wouldn't go as far as, you know, having it be like the way Trump runs the White House, because that's
Yeah.
terrible. That's like, that's off the charts fucked up. But there's a certain amount of respect that's due to the director, because the director works harder than anybody, and it, you know, inherently they're the auteur or the, you know, whatever. But I would have plan A, B, and C as a DP for directors on how to approach things in prep. And even when we go to shooting, I'd have them in the back of my mind if something has to switch or change. I was fortunate enough that I grew up and learned so much technically that I think I was so fortunate to understand lighting and even how to use the camera, you know, in a very cool way. And I thank so many people for that, you know. But I worked really hard on it myself, and because I say I paid attention, man. I paid attention to everybody, including those directors I worked with. Okay, and so there are some frustrations with some directors. As a yes, yes, but at the end of the day, that's part of the deal. Now, going back the other way, in everything that I've done with every, let's just say DP that I've used since I've directed, I have a mutual reverse respect for what they do because I did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I, we make the movie in prep. All the information about how it should look and how it should be lit, or what camera we use, what lens we use, how we move the camera, how we frame shit. You know, that gets a little more detail while you're doing it, the framing. But still, I I work it all out in prep. and the DP that I mean, Mike Galbraith has shot my last, what, 4 movies. He's a Toronto cameraman who was a gaffer. He gaffed for me on my first movie in Toronto, Detroit Rock City, which I shot. And I kind of even helped him move up to DP a little bit. I love him so much and super talented. And so, but I work with other DPs as well. And I just make sure in prep it's done so that when we're shooting, I don't tell them what to do. No. Or we shouldn't be doing this. I mean, I work with the actors when we're shooting. It's all about the actors to me, and making sure that we're getting what we need to put the movie together properly, of course. You know, that all the facets are happening, but I don't tell them what to do. I don't even operate. People say, well, John, you want to shoot and direct? No, I don't. Could I do it? Probably. Yeah, but I don't want to. I want it. That's their job. That's why, again, it's that their single contribution, I think, can be better than my doing 3 jobs if you work together. Yeah. And that's the whole thing about I'm steering the brush, but everybody else has their hand on it, you know? That's what I believe. And I think in general, it's successful. It really is. So if that answers the question, I'm not sure.
It certainly does. You know, for people who know your work and maybe some people who are discovering for the first time, they will have definitely seen a lot of your work and they may not know it. But like to go between all the like some huge projects, like you mentioned, The Mask, we have Annabelle in there, we have several of that Conjuring Universe. There's Dead Silence, Mortal Kombat, all these huge things. Do you ever get a chance to, I don't know, you mentioned, you know, having LPs and stuff. I don't know if you're a physical collector, but do you ever get a chance to keep anything from set? Or have you got any cool shit over the years? Like instantly, I don't know, like Mortal Kombat sticks out to me. I'm like, please God, tell me you've got something cool from that that's like impossible for people to ever get again.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've got Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Here, I'll show you real quick. Look, there's a slate.
Oh, wow. Okay, wow.
And right next to that is me as an assistant cameraman on Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
That's cool.
Okay, okay, so it's so funny you asked that because just randomly, I got an email out of the blue from this gentleman from Spain a couple weeks ago asking me if I had the slate to Poltergeist. He's willing to pay me $6,000 for the slate. And for others too. He wants, you know, he's doing a movie memorabilia show or exposition, I guess you'd call it, over there. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know if I really want to do that. The money, sure, it's a lot of money. My God, whatever. But I've got hats. I got a scripts here, Scorpion King, Chico, which you don't even know is a movie called, wasn't really Chico. It was called The Burning Season. It's an HBO movie I did with John Frankenheimer. We won the Golden Globe for the best thing on television that year. It was an HBO, one of their very first movies, so I was involved in helping start HBO, Tales from the Crypt, these movies with John. And I've got tons of memorabilia. Not much of it is here. Some is here, you know, and it's funny because a lot of it's in a storage unit because, you know, my fiance, this wall right here, we were going to put a lot of my slates because I got slates from almost every movie I've worked on since I was 15. I've even got the slate from the movie I told you about, A Book of Numbers.
That's wild.
So I've got a ton of shit. Yes. Jackets. Some I gave away. Some I gave away to my nephew, and ultimately he sold them on eBay because I just had so much stuff. It's just you move, you purge, you move, you purge, but it's hard to get rid of some of this stuff. You know, but yeah, I've got quite a bit. Yes,
I can already hear the audience being like shrieking when you said like it's hard to get rid of some of that stuff because I don't know. Like obviously you mentioned eBay and a few different things. Like there is people, myself included, who are die hard for crew hats, crew jackets, crew t-shirts, all these
Oh,
like, and like from like really obscure like 80s and
yeah.
90s movies that
It's super
only we
cool.
love, and like maybe other people don't know of the movie as well.
No, it's true. Listen, I'll just real quick, I'm going to show you something else. I just got to do this for you. Um, see that Annabelle
Wow.
surfboard?
Wow.
That was given to me by my agents. And right before I switched to CAA, and I didn't know they even were going to do it for me. I felt so terrible when I did Annabelle. I really feel bad about that, honestly. But they were kind enough to make that for me. And if you ever saw, I don't know if you've seen The Silence, my movie, The Silence, but you
Hmm.
should. So, and that's the vest.
Oh,
That's the
wow.
maquette. That is the maquette that we've scanned for CG, right? So, anyway, I thought you'd get a kick out of that shit. But anyway, yeah, man, I got a lot.
That's like you'll probably get multiple messages now being like, "Hey, can I buy this thing? Hey, can I buy
Yeah,
that
I
thing?"
mean, look at this from The Mask. I'll show it to you.
Oh, wow.
This is Milo, the maquette of Milo, the only one. Bob Engelman and New Line gave it to me, thanking me for what I did. I mean, it's cool
There's
stuff.
a piece of film history as well.
Oh,
That's another
oh,
movie that's come back around now. That's like every single year it seems to be getting rediscovered by a completely new audience, and I suppose a new generation now as well, where it's like
great.
crossed over. And like a lot of these movies now are, I think, out in the zeitgeist where they're they're there forever now. I don't know if it's like, is that
Yeah.
something that ever dawns on you? I know nobody probably likes to, look at themselves and say, "Oh, how great am I?" But like you have done so much stuff and been involved in so many huge projects, and I'm not talking about this from the standpoint of even financial successes or
Right.
anything like that, but movies that are just adored by so many people across the world. And I don't know if you ever get a chance to see it. I see it from time to time on different places, and people tell, really in-depth stories about how maybe just a movie that nobody thinks about changed their life or changed the direction of where things were going. I had a
Mm.
conversation yesterday with somebody, and similar to yourself, actually, they had written a book of all their different experiences and things like
Really?
that. And they said that they were at a convention somewhere, and somebody came up and said, "Hey, I know you." And they had this kind of weird moment. And he was like, "Wait, I've read your book." And then he just dropped everything and he gave the guy a hug and he was like, "Your book
Oh.
and your stories changed the course of my life." I think the guy was dealing with like some serious shit.
Hmm.
And he was like, "Your work and your stuff helped me turn a corner." Does that ever, is it ever something that you give yourself time to think about?
Oh, wow. Um, Not really, except for writing the memoir. It kind of forces you. I've outlined the whole thing. It's not up to date because I did that outline probably 3 years ago or so. So I've got, or four, I don't know how long when I first started, but it's all outlined. And it would force me to bring back more than anything. I mean, it's more about just the experience, but the contributions that I've had. It's interesting. When I met Kathy, um, my first wife had passed away a couple years before. We were together like 42 years, and I wasn't looking for any other woman, man. I was like, I'm done, no big deal. And we met, and it's like a movie story, actually, how we met. It's really awesome, but neither here nor there. The funny thing about meeting her, the day we really met and talked first, she taps me on the shoulder. I just opened the door for her to go into, she was going into physical therapy. I was going into Pilates at the same place. We still go there today, the two of us, for things. She taps me on the shoulder. She goes, I know you. I go, you do? She goes, yeah. About a week or so earlier, I was sitting at a restaurant with my best friend, and we met a couple, and he told them that they need to find a girl for me and whatever. Anyway, um, she had contacted Kathy and said you should meet this guy, and and fine. I actually gave the lady my number, but never heard anything. Didn't think anything of it. I really didn't. And as I opened the door for Kathy, she goes, "Hey, like I say, I know you." I go, "How do you know me?" She goes, "On your Wikipedia page, there's a picture of you with an earring." I go, "I don't even know I had a fucking Wikipedia page. I'm not about that, bro. I mean, yeah, even IMDb is not even up to date on me. I never look at it. I'm not that person, okay? But what I will tell you is this: I do know what contributions I have made, okay? I mean, I could, and I know, listen, I'm going to go here for a second, but I don't normally go here. But I helped put HBO on the map. I helped put New Line on the map. I helped put a 2.3 or 2.7 billion dollar Conjuring franchise on the map. Um, you know, and not saying I deserve all the credit by any means, but I do know what I've done to help those things. And I honestly, financially, haven't benefited much from any of it financially. I will take that though to my grave and be proud that I helped. And who knows, maybe down the road I'm involved in at least two, if not three, four scenarios that if they come to fruition, they're all franchises, all of them. And maybe now the deal I make, especially on the back end, maybe should compensate me more. But again, it's not about that. You know, I'm honestly really proud of what I've been able to contribute and what I've been able, and the friends and people I've met and the experiences I've had with people around the world, everywhere, crews, everywhere, have been amazing. I don't care where I've gone. They've all been amazing. So, actually one of my movies that I'm involved in now would shoot in Ireland for Scotland, actually. And oh my God, would I love to go hang with you guys there. Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, again, I know I've helped, and that makes me happy. That's all. Does that make sense?
And I never like to get super negative. So this question, I'm not meaning to like elicit a negative reaction, but
Sure.
I've heard so many horror stories about the business as well, where, like you mentioned, like, your contributions, the hard work, everything that you've done, attempted to do to help, to this, to that. And then I suppose, the business is notoriously cruel in a lot of ways. Is that a difficult aspect? Because I feel like a lot of times, you can be really creative, you can be really passionate, you can put all your heart and soul into it, but there's always the vultures that kind of sit at the sidelines and just wait to swoop and maybe take advantage of kindness and passion and go, oh yeah, you do all that, and then when the dust settles, it's like you're left, you're just left holding the thing and going, oh, so that's it then. Like, I've heard so many, and it seems to happen a lot to Irish filmmakers and Irish actors and stuff. I kept hearing about this famous water bottle tour. And I was like, what does this mean? It's like you're in something that's kind of maybe highly regarded, or it's like the thing at the time, and you're flown out to LA and you visit all the studios and you get a water bottle at every studio. So your rental is like full of water bottles.
Oh, yeah.
And you come, you fly back to Ireland thinking, yes, New Line told me, and Warner Brothers said this, and Paramount said that, and then you get home and the phone never rings.
Never rings. Yeah. Interesting. Whoa. I love that water bottle tour. Yep. That's very standard. Oh my God. That's classic. Yeah. How do I react to that? I've had experiences with studios and producers that haven't been necessarily pleasant or fair. And I think the most frustrating part of it all is in those situations, a lot of them don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but you still have to deal with it. And you just do. I mean, let's put it this way. Directors don't get final cut. Spielberg doesn't even get final cut necessarily. I mean, maybe he does in most things, but there's a political and I don't know, mechanism, I guess it is, that can cause, actually in some ways creative differences, I guess you could call it, that can really hurt your feelings, but that's part of the deal. So there is that side. There's a lot of bullshit out there, as well as there is just honest and true, people with real integrity. But how can I say this? I'm a sensitive person, very sensitive and very passionate. But I also now have formed a little crust over my heart, if you know what I mean, that is there. And it's a defense mechanism you have to have in this business, And again, I'm not looking for accolades beyond what I've done by any means. But again, you know what you did. You know what your contributions are. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So yeah, it's tough business, man. There's no question. And what else has been tough is what's happened to the business has become so corporate. It's really fucked it up, in my opinion. A lot of these movies, a lot of these scenarios are fucked up. And it deters, excuse me, the creative process and even ultimately the ultimate outcome, I think. So I really do believe that. I mean, even look, as much as I've gone to how many movies I've made in Canada, in Toronto. Most of the movies in the past, how many years have been done there? And that's it's all because of this. And it's business. I get that. But I'm damn glad that California is starting to really come up with some subsidies to let Hollywood be Hollywood again, because that sucks. Listen, I'm glad to go to Ireland. I'm glad to go to Toronto. I'm glad to go anywhere in the world. But I'm also pissed that Hollywood has been screwed. It's not right. It's just not. And so, yeah, there's some bitterness in the business. I have more crew in Toronto than I do in California and Hollywood now, so I don't like that. But ironically, though, in the movies that I'm involved in right now, a lot of great people, very great people involved in every single one of them. And I feel comfortable and I feel the love and I give the love,
Yeah, it's wild. Like I've heard stories about people saying that it's cheaper to, when you're making a project or whatever, to fly halfway across the world and spend a ton of money to make a location look like the location you just flew away from in LA or wherever it might be, which is such a bizarre concept. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
Um, you mentioned franchises and stuff you're um,
Hmm.
connected to now.
Hmm.
And I know even if you haven't answered this, it will probably be no, I don't know, whatever. But I figure I might as well. I think the audience will probably not like if I don't ask.
Hmm.
Are these existing IPs or franchises? So there's rumblings. I don't know if you're privy to this or have seen this online about a potential sequel to Dead Silence.
It's not about that. And I wouldn't be surprised because that would be James, of course, and his passion for that. And that's interesting. I do not know about that. No, I don't. I don't. And I have a good relationship with James. I really do. But, we're on our separate paths. That's all. And I'm not in communication with him enough to know, to be honest. But no. But the other projects that I have, one's from a video game, one's from a book. Um, One is not IP, and that's the one that has the least opportunity to probably get made. And the other one is IP that is very unconventional, but it's giant. And it's probably the next movie I'm going to do. And I love it.
Interesting. Interesting. That leaves people now to wonder and try and figure out what you're talking about, which I love. Um, you've worked on so many different, I suppose, genres throughout your career.
Yeah, true.
And, obviously on the show, like
Hmm.
people want to hear about horror and the scary stuff and things like that. Are you a horror fan? And do you have to be a horror fan to be able to either direct or shoot movies like that?
Okay. Yes and no. That's a shitty answer, but I'm going to say yes and no. No, especially to be a shooter, because if you understand the story and you understand the how to craft, um, you can learn to craft and how to craft horror movies, whether they're gore porn or super psychological and everything in between. Okay, because as a good cinematographer, let's say, can accommodate anything without understanding the genre, I think. Now, I am not a horror aficionado. Do I like it? Do I enjoy it? I love crafting horror movies. Super fun. And I did as a DP, and I do even more as a director. And there's a reason for that, which I'll get into. But I do think being an aficionado and a real, you know, knowing them all, and I'm not one of those people actually. I have ultimate respect though for all of them. Ultimate respect. I mean, I love making them. I don't necessarily want that to be the only thing I do, because
Yeah,
I
of
really
course.
think I'm capable of serious drama or whatever. Um, but I do. Yeah, I mean, I think that those that are aficionados have a certain sense of what scares them and what scares other people. And I do think there's that innate ability can make a DP, or let's say a director, have an edge potentially. Yes, absolutely. But I am not really that person. Um, you know, I have to say that I owe a lot to James, one, who gave me the opportunity, starting with Dead Silence, as a matter of fact, it's the first thing I shot with and for him, to really have a wonderful collaboration with him. on, again, talk about someone who's so stylized, he's brilliant, he's the master of horror in our time in a way, or one of them, of course. To collaborate with him initially, especially in a visual way, because I'm super visual. And although I was the universal kind of cameraman that they wanted someone with a little experience to go with James, because he had only done Saw before that, even though Saw was amazing. And James is, like I say, super talented. So, I will say that we helped each other a lot. And I learned a lot from him, and I think he learned a bit from me too. And that was awesome. So I'm extremely thankful to him, of course, and I think he's thankful to me too, you know. But I don't know. He is an aficionado. He is that person, and that definitely has something to do with his success.
Dead Silence is another one of those movies that I would put in that category that I feel like has that staying power. So, and again, look, I know it's probably fantastic. People get into making things for different reasons. Some might be financial, some might be awards and accolades, some might be just the passion and the creativity and the heart they want to put into it. But I can't help but feel like creating projects like that are nearly timeless, that seem to just live on and on and on and on and don't go away in a good way. Like that movie, for example, I'm kind of shocked that, like, I think it's next year will be 20 years since that movie came out. And it's just wild to me that it never got a sequel or a kind of spun into a franchise. But just how I watched that at least probably once, if not twice a year. And for years, I remember telling people, and it was like this kind of undiscovered, like it was always like one of those movies I would have in my back pocket to other people who were into horror, and I'd be like, I know you haven't seen this, and this is a really good fucking movie. And they would always be like, wow, but just how it's shot, how it's lit, just everything about it, it's just, I don't know, it bleeds off the screen, and I would have loved to have been able to see it theatrically to see how that played.
Oh yeah, it was awesome on the big screen. And again, James and I were so in sync visually, and even the way ultimately it was color timed at the end, which has a big effect on it. Aside from the way it was lit, of course, and the way it was production design, and Julie Berghoff, who's amazing, and everybody, the production designer, everybody who's involved. It is good. I think what happened is, and I could be wrong, but this is my assessment. It didn't do great in box office. So the next thing that James did, I want to say, was Insidious. I think it was Insidious.
Yeah, it would have been. It's like 2009.
And that was all these things have been. Then it was Insidious 1 and 2 and more, and then The Conjuring and Annabelle and The Nun. All these things were box office thingies, and I believe that James has a really soft spot in his heart for Dead Silence, and I totally get why he wants to make a sequel or another one, and I think it's great. And if he wanted my help, I'd be glad to do it. But I don't know if he would. He's got other directors now that they use, and it's all good. Whatever.
Did you know around that time, of the, like, Dead Silence comes out, and then it's like probably 3-4 years later, we have things like Insidious, and then you mentioned the whole Conjuring universe, and I do want to ask you a little bit about Annabelle in a minute, but
sure, of course.
When you guys are sitting, I don't know if it's like over a coffee, if it's like a lunch, if it's an actual meeting full of people, could everybody tell or feel like, oh shit, this is going to be like, this is like I think we might have something here that's going to be really like.
Yes. Yes. To answer your question, yes. Now, I can't say one way or the other how we felt about dead silence when we were doing it, except that we thought what we were doing was very cool. I loved it. I loved collaborating with James that first time, and it was bitching. It was great. I mean, it was cool. Insidious, absolutely. I could tell, we could tell. You know, the first one we did I did it for nothing, you know, for James. And then how, even though we ultimately got paid because we made a deal with Jason Blum and never did it again, but the whole crew got paid something. And if you either got a very low salary or you got paid nothing, and then you got a back end if they're, you know, and we all made some money. It was crazy. Not a lot, but something. I could tell on The Conjuring. Yes. We could tell on The Conjuring for sure. The first one, for sure. I could tell on Annabelle, actually. I could tell. I felt it. The Mask, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, those really stand out to me as knowing. I'll never forget on The Mask, I read the script and I went, wow, this fucking thing is amazing, to myself. And I gave it to my wife at the time, God bless her, she's passed, but she read it and she goes, John, I don't know if I get this. You know, it's kind of cool, but I don't know if I get it. I said, oh no, this is special, you know? And ironically, I've got a script today about with one of my movies that I feel the same way. Actually, I've got two of them that I feel could be something, really be something. And whether that comes to fruition, who the fuck knows? But yeah, you know, there's a certain synergy. I mean, when I worked as an assistant cameraman on Poltergeist, I knew, I could tell. What a crazy experience. You know, there's been other movies I've worked on too as well where I felt that, but those really, really stand out, you know.
There's another one, like you mentioned, working on something like Poltergeist, and then fast forward all these years, and a couple of years back, I always try to get out to Orlando every year for Halloween Horror Nights, and
Mhm.
you know they had a Poltergeist haunted house in Universal, and to think, you know, a group of people collaborated and got together and made this thing that all these years later, a design team in a theme park are designing a walkthrough experience that people are flying from all over the world
To experience.
to try and like experience walking through a movie that you guys shot and made together is such a wild thing to me. And like that's, you know, that's got to be crazy for you guys as well, right? To think that like these things, a lot of these projects, a lot of these things you've worked on transcend any kind of like boundary.
It does. You know, where I go with that is, Aaron, I start first with a still picture, just a simple still picture. It's a time machine. Bam, you stop time. Now think doing that 24 times a second and turning it into a movie, a story that, you know, there's a energy there or something. I can't really, I don't know if that's the right word, that, you know, when it's done right, like even a single painting, whatever, when it's done right, it's indelible in culture, in minds and souls of everybody. And yes, I mean, I have to say, is it as rewarding as being a doctor and saving lives or a surgeon? Maybe not, but damn, it's rewarding to know that you've contributed to the world things that take them away for a moment and let them enjoy, you know, something more than what else is in their life and expose them to emotions that make them laugh, cry, and jump out of their fucking seat.
It's and I think I've understated it for years, the importance of film and that experience, that human experience of seeing something like that on screen, especially with an audience. I always underplayed it. I think I was like, you know what? When we live in a world where we can all just sit on our couch and watch whatever we want, that'll be better. And now that we have that, I feel like myself and probably a good portion of movie lovers and probably people in general kind of yearn for that like communal experience of something, whether it makes you cry, laugh, smile, scared, whatever it is, to go through that together, even if you don't know anybody else in the room. There's a, I feel like we all probably sync up in some way,
It's
and you go,
true.
yeah,
It's true. I so agree with you, and it's almost supernatural
yeah,
if you want to
yeah.
talk about horror, because everybody wants to know what's on the other side, the unexplainable, whether it's comes from religion, which is a major part of supernatural horror, or metaphysics, whatever people are into. It's very interesting to me. So, yeah, um, there is an ethereal connection between what comes through a screen and what people experience individually and as a group. And it's amazing to me how well connected we really all are if we allow ourselves to be. And that follows through to everything in the world, including the weird shit that's going on and how we're divided. And movies actually, I think, do bring us together actually a lot and more than people realize.
That process, you mentioned obviously you shoot Mortal Kombat, and then before you know it, you're directing the sequel. Um, you work on Insidious and the start of that whole universe, and then the Conjuring universe. The transition then into Annabelle, is that something that you actively sought out, or is it just through conversations and then before you know it's like, oh, I guess I'm taking the helm on this? Because that's another one of those things that now for a lot of people, like, the movie came out in 2014.
Yeah,
There are people out there that is their horror icon, and uh it's a character now that if you see it in a lineup with Freddy, Jason, all those, you don't think twice. It's this established thing.
correct.
So I suppose, how did all that come about? And then looking back on the whole thing now, how do you feel about it?
I love it. I'm proud of it. Um, Overall, it was an incredibly great experience, first of all. But, or not but, and to your point, it was not, it came out kind of out of the blue, actually. We were watching in a theater. It was the first or second test screening of the first Conjuring. And Peter Safran, who was a producer on it, who now runs Warner Brothers DC Comics. I mean, he's, amazing guy, amazing producer, great guy. I love him. He was sitting in front of me, and the movie was over, and they were handing out the cards, for everybody to, to give their comments. He turns back to me and he goes, "John, I think you should direct Annabelle." I went, "Sure." And it happened. So, and I guess he must have, maybe he had already talked to James, or I don't know, or I can't remember, but he did, of course, and James had to okay it, of course. And he did. And it was cool. I'll tell you a couple of things about it. I work really hard when I'm directing, harder than even maybe some directors. I'm avid about prep, And my mentor, one of them, there's two of them specifically. One is Alfred Hitchcock, and one is John Frankenheimer, who I had the opportunity to work with. Shot quite a few things for, and I learned a lot from him. Even though he didn't do horror, man, he was an incredible director at character and thrillers and action and just innate storytelling. But Hitchcock, I read a book called God, what's his name? Truffaut on Hitchcock. And man, after I read that thing, I learned, because he was a director himself, and what he explained about how Hitchcock created his movies was really interesting to me. And he had the whole movie done before he shot it. He had it cut, everything. He knew exactly, he only shot what he wanted, he needed to the T. Okay, so on Annabelle, I did my version of that. And I sat, you have to wait a little while. I do it on every movie now. You have to wait a little while until you know who the actors are, who you've cast, what the locations are. You've prepped a certain amount to know what the movie is and what you have to make the movie. And then I sit down in those days. For some reason, I just wake up at 4:15 in the morning. Maybe because at 4:15 is the witching hour in the movies. I don't fucking know. But I couldn't go back to sleep, and my brain was just turning. And I output the movie. I literally write out the whole movie, edited and cut in my mind. It's a storyboard without pictures, literally. You could make a storyboard like that from it. Okay? I would get up at 4:15 and I'd work for about 3 hours, and then I'd go surfing, and I'd be back, and that would be, my day would almost be over by then. Not over, but I've already done my thing, and fuck, it was awesome. And I will say, I'd say 75% of the movie is my output. Now, that being said, it actually gives you more creative freedom. Because if you want to make a change, you can know how everything fits together. You can make changes. James, can add to the party, whatever, which he did some in additional photography. He came in. I mean, the first test was really good. But, we did some more photography. That's the formula with New Line. You do it, and then you do test screenings, and you shoot more. It's just the way they do it. And it's awesome. And I'm really fucking proud of that, to be honest. I learned enough from James. I learned enough from his and mine coordination together. I learned enough from John Frankenheimer, from Hitchcock, from all those people, everyone I've worked with, to kind of say, fuck it, man. I'm just going to output this thing and I had the ability because I was a shooter. So I'm really visual, and I saw the storyboards in my mind. I just had to tell the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
it's hard, man. I'm telling you, it's hard to do, and it's bold, but I do it. So there's that. And when we first started shooting, it may have even been the first night of shooting. I have a feeling it was. I'm trying to remember. But the opening of Annabelle, the first, basically, not in the church or whatever, but the opening where the the home invasions sequence in the beginning of the movie, which is super horrific. I created that thing, and a lot of it's all in one shot. It's when the Movi, which is that little gyro, it's kind of like a mini Steadicam, and we use
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
instead of a Steadicam to pull that thing off. And I'll never forget, James was on the set that night, and he was just watching, and I felt he was proud that he was proud, and I felt proud to have the opportunity. And once we did that, the rest just came, and it was intense. It was intense, and what a great cast! And Annabelle Wallace was amazing. I actually picked her, if you want to know the truth. And it was super cool. It was so I use the formula now in everything I do, anything I do. But I don't know if that answered the question.
I don't know if this is a strange question to ask, but in those times, where you make a movie like Annabelle, and people look at it now and it's this, it's Annabelle, that it's not like something new that's coming out or something yet to be established. It's this thing.
Yeah.
People often wonder, oh, how come you didn't come back and want to do a sequel, or how come you didn't like stay involved in that or whatever. And a lot of times I find I get the answer of, sometimes people do what they've wanted to do and they've kind of put their mark on something and they're ready to try other things, like you mentioned several times, about serious drama and different things
Mhm.
like that. And it's not always, I think people assume from the outside looking in, you attach somebody's name to these big projects and think, yeah, so wouldn't you just want to do that over and over again? That's got to be a great feeling. And then it's like, yeah, but creatively, maybe it doesn't really get me going anymore. Was there ever conversations? Was it something that you were just
You
like,
know,
maybe I'm good?
what happened was an interesting sort of chain of events. Um, what happened was, um, let me just think about this. They asked me before Annabelle 2 was even necessarily conceived, actually. Um, I did a movie with them called Wolves at the Door, which you may or may not have seen. But I'm actually proud of that little movie. I like it. And honestly, at the time, I think what happened was, and this is just being brutally honest, I'll never forget, I worked with an editor who had done movies like that before. He was not an old timer, but very experienced, and he was a good guy. And I think I turned my director's cut in within 5.5, 6 weeks. You get 10. And I'll never forget when we finished the director's cut, he slid back in his chair and he goes, "This is the movie, man. It's fucking great." Well, it didn't turn out that way. Like they come in and they want to change things and this and that. And that's fine, but it got a little weird, to be honest. And that's some of the politics that are involved with studios and producers and this and that. I won't go into the details. But I think it sort of soured those studio execs with me just a little bit, because I've more or less tried to fight for what I believed in, and it just didn't work out so well. Nothing against them, but that's the business. And so I think I fell a little bit out of line with them. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
so I wasn't really, they were considering me to direct Conjuring 2, however. And I talked to them about it. I was into it. In the meantime, Michael Chavez, I know they ended up meeting and he did it. Matter of fact, that's cool. He even called me and asked me for advice on how to approach it. And I gave him my advice, and I was glad to do that. But I fell a little bit out of sync with them. And there's no hard feelings, I don't think at all. I mean, not with me really, but I just don't. I think they wanted to, I think Gary came in and did one, he did the third one or so, Gary Doberman. And I even helped, he even followed me around on Wolves at the Door shadowed me as a director. And I gave him my, 2 cents about what I was doing. And I'm glad that he got to do that, but so that's what really happened, honestly. Okay. Now, that being said, I'm going to go into something that's kind of apropos for this whole scenario you just asked. I believe the next movie I'm going to do, and I don't want to jinx the fucking thing, but I'm going to tell you this. You'll never guess what it's called. You can't. Robert the Doll.
Oh.
And you may or may not know who that is.
Yes.
I think as a horror aficionado,
yes, you
would. But I didn't even know who Robert the Doll was. Okay. Now, technically, empirically, Robert the Doll internationally is more famous and more haunted than Annabelle the Doll. I didn't know this, but
by a country mile, I would say.
By a country mile. I didn't know. And Raul, who wrote it, saw The Conjuring, saw Annabelle, he wasn't a horror writer. He was the guy I was telling you about earlier who didn't even really start writing movie scripts till he was in his early 40s. And he wrote the script, man, that was so fucking good. It's got the flavor of Conjuring in terms of the depth that The Conjuring has. Okay? And it's fucking scary in a kind of a Conjuring way. Not exactly, but kind of. And I read it and I went, fuck, do I want to do another doll movie? I mean, think about how it's going to be compared to Annabelle. And you know what I mean? It's like, is that something I should do? But I'm telling you, man, it's so good. And Raul and I have worked together. We tuned it a little bit since the first draft I read of his and, whatever. But there's a lot of action behind this thing right now. And it is a franchise. That's why I said it was a non-typical friend or IP. It's IP, but it's different than a book or it's this legacy where thousands of people write letters to Robert asking for forgiveness because they've gone there and they haven't respected him the way you're supposed to respect him. And it's wild. And so anyway, I think that may be my next movie.
That's like a mic drop kind of thing. With something like that, just to touch on that for a second, obviously it's kind of this, I don't know, urban legend, this myth, this supernatural thing that's in the real world, let's say.
Yes, in the real world.
Is that something that can be owned? Like, is that something where does somebody own Robert the Doll? And then on top of that, I suppose, is this something that you would like to live at a big studio?
Okay. There is ownership of the doll, and it's Key West, an entity in Key West. I don't know what the name of it is. They own the doll.
Uh-huh.
They have the rights to the doll. Other studios apparently have asked for the rights, but Raul, who grew up in Miami and lives in Miami to this day and has been in Key West his whole life, for some reason got the idea to do this. And he is 100% in with them, and they've given us the rights to do it. Now, is this something a big studio might pick up? Possibly. But what's ironic or interesting is because that's one approach we have or had, but still have, is to go directly to studios. But we're involved with he's represented by UTA, and they are 200% behind this thing, even for talent. And we've international, I won't get into any other names, but two giant international sales companies have seen it. There's the script, I did a tone deck, there's a little sizzle reel, and they see not just that this is a really fucking good script, it's scary. I mean, a guy that's doing a budget for it right now has never made a horror movie. He's never made a movie this small. Well, $15 million budget. It's not, it's not 6, but it's in the 15 zone about gross. Not maybe with 9 million or 10 million, you can get to that with subsidies and all that shit. But neither here nor there. He read the script and he just goes, wow, it's very scary. And anybody that reads it goes, ooh. And the more I researched it, right? The more I researched Robert, I just had to say yes. And I was up against other directors, but Raul had watched The Conjuring and Annabelle like multiple times before he wrote it, and other movies, and it's the character stuff in this script and this story is excellent. It's really a classy, elevated, as they say, project, story. And of course it's IP, and of course it's sequelable, if you know what I mean, because you could go crazy with this thing. And it takes place in contemporary times, but it is homage to Robert Eugene Otto, whose doll it was originally in 1905. And it's cool.
Obviously, I know we probably can't get into it a massive amount, but I think there was some sort of Robert Dahl movie that came out years ago.
There's a couple that are funky Medinas, but they're not about really the real story.
Because one of them, and it's just such a funny that we're having this conversation, and you were the one who made Annabelle as well, but there's one of them, I don't know if you've ever seen like the artwork, but it's basically, it's Robert the doll, but it kind of looks like Annabelle if she got a haircut.
Yeah, I've seen that imagery. Yeah.
It's a very weird, kind of bizarre, like uncanny valley thing where I'm like, wow, you really tried to just put everything together.
No, okay, so on that note, let's look at what James did with Annabelle, because he did that. We did that, but he did that really on The Conjuring. That's when the Annabelle doll was created, and she's obviously not a big Raggedy Ann doll, which was really the original situation. And James wanted to take, well, maybe there were copyright things, I don't know, but he wanted to make it his own, and he did a great job. And I helped him a little bit with it, actually, when on The Conjuring, and gave him my opinions and all. But that's classic James Wan stuff, that doll, right? So what's really interesting and unique about this, or different about this, I don't want to change that fucking thing. No way.
Oh, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying. It's scarier even in its own right than the Annabelle doll in its own right. And the first thing I said in my interview, I said, can we have the rights can we have the doll? Can we use that? I don't mean literally the original, but can we make replicas of it? And they said yes. And that's when I went, okay. Because why fuck up a Rembrandt is the expression you've probably heard before. And it's awesome. I mean, and what Raul did with the script is pretty brilliant in terms of how he, like I say, mirrors what really happened in the origination of Robert. and how it ties it together. Okay. And I'm just going to go on to one other aspect of it real quick that really attracted me to it. Okay. Which is in the story, well, in real life, Eugene, Robert Eugene Otto got this doll. He was so infatuated with it, he gave the doll its first name, Robert, and he took Eugene Otto as his name for the rest of his life. And he, as a little boy, when he with the doll, he even gave it. He dressed it in one of his own sailor suit, which today is what sits in the Martello Museum in Key West. That same sailor suit from that same little boy, authentically, it's the original. And whenever he got in trouble, or if he was anything happened weird in the house, he blamed the doll. He said Robert did it, right? And the story goes that Emmeline, who was his nanny, who was Cuban and Bahamian descent, put a curse on the doll because she lost her baby girl under the auspices of Eugene Otto's father, who was a doctor. And there's one, anyway, she put a curse on the doll, and thus it became possessed with this little girl's spirit, but it's guided by this dark entity that hovers in Key West. And it's called Queso, whatever, Island of Bones. There's more, you dig up any house there, you're going to find human bones because all the people that have been buried there for thousands of years, starting with Indians, native Indians that were there, much less whatever. And the fact that Robert was taken from the Steiff factory in Germany and is stuffed with wood chips from the Black Forest, where no one walks alone, really. Okay? And it's incredible what's gone into the making of this scenario. But the point is, young Otto had a relationship and would talk to this doll, and they would hear voices coming from the room. His parents would hear voices coming from the room, apparently. So, okay, now they approach me. And when I was a little boy, I was a very young sibling compared to my brothers and sisters. The closest one to me is 8 years older, and my brother's 15 years older. So when I was 5 years old or so, I didn't have anybody to play with my age. So I made up my imaginary friends, and I called them my fellows. And anytime I did something wrong, I blamed my fellows. So Raul in the story, I won't say much more than this, created this little character today's time, this little kid named Sly is his name, because he loves Stallone. And that's his nickname. But he has an imaginary friend named Patrick, and Patrick speaks to him. Okay, so, even in the tone deck that I did for the movie, I started with, what if your imaginary friends really aren't imaginary? That's it. Okay. So
yeah, just not enough as well.
That's it. And, so here I am potentially directing another freaking doll movie, but it's a good one.
Yeah, I can't I don't know if you've noticed the smile on my face. Like I
Yeah, I
feel like
do.
my
I
cheeks.
see
I'm
it.
like, wow. But I can already see. I'm like envisioning the market, and I can see like the commercials. I can hear the voice. I just the whole thing. It kind of. I'm like, wow. This makes so much sense. It's odd to me that nobody has felt like that about it, and they just kind of tried to rip off other stuff and not really. Um, you know, if you're going in to do something like this, and obviously you've dealt with Annabelle and some of the stuff in The Conjuring, and they're
Sure.
based on these supposed real life hauntings and stories.
Correct. Correct.
Are you somebody who believes in that? And have you ever
Mm.
had any sort of bizarre experience?
Yes, I do believe in it. Although first of all, I grew up very religious in Catholic Church, almost became a Jesuit priest. So I have that background in terms of spirituality and the other side, if you will, the darkness and the light and all that stuff. I don't practice anymore, but I have that background. And so there is that, but I've had personal experiences a few times in my life that have encountered ghosts, maybe. Okay. And so I I do believe it's possible. Um, I mean, it's ironic. Ozzy Osbourne, you know, visited Robert, and after he and his son left there, they swear his life was completely fucked up by the doll. I mean, not saying that God rest his soul. That's why he passed away, even though some people have alluded to that. I don't believe that necessarily at all, but it's interesting. Robert has a real effect on people. Everything that I've read, everything that I've seen, I've talked to this guy, David Sloan, who is the curator at the museum, who's been with this doll for 15 years, 16 years. The stories he has to tell, pretty incredible. So I think what's awesome is, and the way we're approaching this is very realistically, like, yeah, this is fucking real, man. So let's see if it is.
That's so awesome. Like I really hope I'm gonna put it out there now that I'm not gonna say if, when this all comes to fruition and you can talk more, we need to do this again so we can dive deeper into
Of course.
everything that's coming out. Okay, so one or two more quick fire questions before I
Sure.
let you go. Um you know, I asked you before, are you a horror fan, or is it something you're big into? What are some of, I suppose, maybe give us a horror movie or two that stick out for you as, like, they don't have to be the greatest movie ever or anything like that, but maybe a movie you've revisited multiple times over your life.
I think The Exorcist was, again, because of my Catholic upbringing, I don't think it holds up today like it did, actually. Some movies have. I think, interestingly enough, and it's not because my dad worked on it, I think The Wizard of Oz and those flying monkeys still stick in my mind. And they still, in some odd way, when I look at that thing today, even though it was made in the 30s, 40s, whatever the fuck it was, um, it's pretty amazing. Um, um, Silence of the Lambs is a movie that's a different kind of horror that is giant for me. I love psychological horror, and so that's key. Um, The Shining is another one. Psychological horror really gets me. The Birds, those kind of movies really get me, more than any others. I'm not, I appreciate slasher movies. I think they're cool, but they don't scare me at all. They're just kind of great entertainment. They're interesting to watch. And I get why people love them. I'm not dissing them at all. But I'm more the psychological vein. And that's why I think that's why I aspired. Even Robert the doll is super psychological. And I mean, another movie that I'm involved in is called Deprivation. It's truly not like supernatural, but it's a fucking horror movie, man. I mean, it's horrific when nobody can sleep for 8 days on an island and they can't get off. What happens to them? Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's scary ass shit, man. So that would be my response, I guess.
That's nearly scarier than like your standard horror movie.
Yeah, it is.
I know you mentioned, you don't like Wikipedia and IMDb and all that stuff. You're not really, that's not you. But is there anywhere where fans of yours, or maybe people who are discovering you for the first time, is there a place that you would direct them to keep an eye on to see maybe about some of these projects or when something may or may not be announced?
Not really. I'm really, it's so interesting. This may be because I'm weird. I don't do social media. I don't do TikTok. When Facebook first came out, I started to do it and I went, I don't have the time for this, much less, I'm afraid if I start this, I won't be able to make a commitment to share myself with everybody else the way they share. It's like I just didn't connect with it. So I don't have TikTok. I mean, none of that. I don't do it, and it's just the way I am. It's fine that everybody does it, but it's not my deal. And I never even look at IMDb. And no, I can't say so. I don't. I'm more of a mystery, my friend.
People will just have to keep an eye online. I'm sure there'll be press releases and things like that when the time is right.
Absolutely. Of course there will, assuming it all happens. It may not, but I have a feeling this one's going to happen. It's for all the right reasons, at least. And I'm excited about it.
Final thing, look, I have a million other questions I can ask you, but you've been so gracious with your time already, and I'm conscious of that. And
No
I would
worries.
definitely love to extend the
worries.
olive branch to maybe do this again when some of these projects get going and they're
Sure,
announced.
of course.
I would love to do this again. So, final thing, I normally ask people, why horror? What does it mean to you? But I suppose your career has been way more broad. It's been across multiple genres and things like that. I guess to kind of change the question slightly would be, why film? Why that art form? Like, what do you think, I suppose, drew you to that as a way of expressing yourself, and then what has it meant to you?
Okay. I think why I think that horror movies have been considered B movies for almost ever because they're lower brow to some people, right? I disagree. I mean, you take the movies I just mentioned, but you take just this last year, Sinners, Weapons. I mean, look at the acclaim those things got. But there's a reason why. Um, Horror, like comedy, like drama, affects people. And my job as a director or a filmmaker in any capacity, but ultimately as a director, of course, is to entertain, first of all, and second of all, and especially in horror, you got to get under their skin. And it takes craft to do that. There's craft in drama, there's craft in comedy, pacing, all that. But as I say to most people about directing horror, you get to use even more tools in your toolbox because not only do you have to invest the audience in the characters, you got to do that first. And then if you do that and you make the audience invested in them and care for them, then you can get under their skin and scare the shit out of them. And that takes a certain crafting to do that. And that's fun, whether it's psychological or it's a jump scare or it's even gore porn, blood, how you do that. It affects people. And your job as a filmmaker, if you want to be successful and feel good about what you do, you got to do that. So that's why I think horror it's underrated in terms of what it takes to do it compared to some other genres, I mean. And the other question is, what have I learned? Or what was the other question? I'm sorry.
What is it meant to you?
What is it meant to me? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, because I feel like we always talk about, what it means to the audience, what we got from it, how it made us feel, how it changed us or helped us or whatever. But sometimes we maybe never focus on the other side of that coin, where it's like, what does the person creating these worlds and doing these things actually get out of it, or how does it change them?
I kind of already said it, which is it means a lot to me that I've done my job right. That I've done my job right. It's that simple.
I love that. John, it's been a genuine pleasure, and I do mean I would love to stay in touch, and I would love to maybe
anytime. You're a beauty, and maybe I'll get to see you in Ireland. You never know.
Yeah,
we get that other movie. You never know.
You need to come out here and visit us.
Yeah, that'd be great. And you're a wonderful man. I can tell. It's great. You're very nice, very calm, and I love that. Okay.
Appreciate that. Likewise. For everybody listening and watching this, normally I say, the links to something are down below in the description, but you're just going to have to keep an eye out and wait for some of these projects to be announced. And we'll do this again when the time is right.
Sounds great. All right, brother. Peace.